We are at the Fosse Ardiantine Memorial, which is in southern Rome, and it is a memorial to a really sad and tragic mass murder. What happened, and these are the tombs inside, is that in March of 1944, the Nazis collected 335 people, Jews, professors, random people from the prisons, and took them here and executed them. I'm indicating here because these are the tombs of those actual people, including some unidentified people. And in theory, the Nazis did this in retaliation for an attack by Italian partisans, also in March of 1944, which killed 32 Nazis on the Via Rasala. And this is the Italian government's monument to it. This is just a sad and horrifying occasion. I'm so glad you come back. I really love doing these, and I love tonight's story that I want to tell you because it is dramatic. It is the stuff that you can't read when you read Eternal, but it really will give you an insight about the times, the history, the law, and also the creative process. I'll do what I usually do, which is tell you a little about what you just saw, because it's really, really a really significant and really sad place and an event that I want to tell you about. You know, remember that we've talked in previous videos about how I'm trying to show you parts of Rome that are actually on the beaten track, but you might not know what was there if you didn't know the history. And that's what I'm trying to do, just show you the cool things that are really important and you should know about. I mean, when I started to write Eternal, I said, this is a story that needs to be told. And that's how I felt. And the interesting thing about tonight, which is called the Ardiantine Cave Massacre. Now, I might be pronouncing that terribly, but what can you do? Is that it is not on the beaten track. It is truly off the beaten track. You never would go there if you didn't know what you were looking there for. And since we're all locked down, I want to tell you a little about what's inside because I thought it would be disrespectful to film inside. But I did take some pictures and I want you to see them because it is really a remarkable event. And there's a real villain at the heart of it. And that's what I want you to understand about tonight. So let me first show you what it looks like, because this is it's right around the corner from the catacombs. This is like the bus stop. There's a bus stop right out in front of it. It is a massacre that took place in a cave, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. But I think what is so fascinating about it is so far around the catacombs, which a lot of people go to. But I actually I think I've mentioned to you before, I went there with my best friend and my research assistant, Laura, and we're walking all over trying to find this place because I knew that I had to go there and I knew why, which I'm going to explain to you. And then we got off the bus and we're like, here's where it is. We're walking all around. We go in. There is no line. It is extremely significant World War II historical site. There's no ticket booth. There's no anybody. Here's the sign. It's in Italian. If you don't read Italian, which I don't, you're out of luck. I took Latin, equally out of luck, but kind of cool. Here's the front of it. Has the Italian flag. Kind of a open area with pebbles and I'm like, gee, it's supposed to be a cave. I don't know. Like I've actually never been in a cave. I'm from the suburbs, you know. Sorry. I'm like, what does it even look like? And then we start to walk around and it looks like this. No sign really, just these, you know, there's a hill and then it's built into the hill. There's a wall and these open areas. There's no one around to ask. I have all the guidebooks in the world. I bought everything that could teach you about this and I knew why I needed to go there. But I'm like, well, I guess we'll just go in. So we go in and this is what we start to see. We're in a cave. And it is a cave that is just as it was in 1944 when this horrible thing took place. Now, I'm going to tell you what happened, which is that it was in March of 1944, and it was the end of the war in Rome. At that point, Rome was under Nazi occupation, and the head of the Gestapo at that time was named Lieutenant Colonel Kepler. He ran the show. And the Nazi occupation was unbelievably brutal because the Nazis were really angry at the Italians. Because if you remember, and as I've told you last week, it was a really strange political flip-flopping. Italy enters the war on the side of the Nazis and then changes sides. Can't decide which side to join with ultimately during the armistice and ends up getting bombed by both sides, the Allies and the Axis. But eventually, the point is that the Nazis who occupied Rome are angry at the Italians. And there is starvation, there is martial rule, the partisans fighting the Nazis are dealt with brutally. They're taken to Via Tasso, which you know about because you watch these and you see what those prison cells are like. And so one day what happens in March is that there is an attack by anti-fascists on a little platoon of SS officers who are marching in formation like they do down Via Rassallo. And the odd, weird thing, of course, that the Nazis tend to do everything on a schedule. So in a way, it was very easy to attack them. And so the partisans do this whole ruse. It's really clever. They hide a bomb inside a trash cart and they're getting ready. And when the Nazis march by, the bomb blows and 33 Nazis are killed. And it is a big victory for them, and they were having precious few. But the Nazis went really, really angry and really furious, and Kepler is furious. He goes to the scene because, as I said, he's the head of the whole SS, and it's SS guys who are killed. He flies into a rage. He gets on a telegram to Hitler. Hitler says, I authorize you, Kepler, to kill 10 people for each of the ones you lost. You are personally authorized to kill 330 men. And Kepler says, fine, I'm on it. And he goes throughout Rome. He grabs people that have absolutely no relationship to the bombing. He empties out the prison of Via Tasso. He grabs people off the street. He grabs a 15-year-old boy just walking by. He takes about 50 Jews because he's viciously anti-Semitic, and he puts them all in these lorries, as they call them, trucks, and they take him down to this deserted area in the caves, the Ardiantine cave massacre. And what he does, now this is kind of strong stuff, but you can deal because it's really important to know. And it tells you something about Kepler, which is why this matters. What he does is he lines all the people up, and he's got his SS men that are going to be shooting all of these poor victims, right? And he says, take them in 5 at a time into the cave, make him kneel, and shoot him in the back of the head. And now, the first 5 go into the cave. They kneel right against this wall. I was there. Now you are there. They kneel, and the first SS officer who reports to Colonel Kepler can't do it. He is so disgusted. He doesn't understand why he's shooting civilians. He doesn't see any authorization for it. Even though he is SS and they were attacked, even he is disgusted. And he physically vomits. He actually vomits right there. And he doesn't want to do it. He can't do it. And Kepler says, give me your gun. And this is reported. In fact, Kepler testified to this. Kepler takes the man's gun and shoots the guy in the back of the head. And then he oversees them shooting every single one of 335 people. And he makes the people who were shot lean and kneel on the corpses of the people who had just been shot. It is a massacre. It is disgusting. It is awful. It takes place at these caves, and then when they were done, the Nazis covered it up, blew it up so that their deed would be hidden. But too many people knew about it. They heard the shots. They were like, it was right in Rome. They're like, something happened there, and they went and found out. This is what it looked like. This is what it looks like in there. It's quiet. It's dark. It's cool. And by the way, as I've said to you before, Italy in a way was the forgotten front. There was an Italian Holocaust, but it hasn't been written about. That's one of the reasons I wrote Eternal and why I really love the book, because we need to know this stuff. It's not told. There's an untold story in here, this historical event that very few people know about. So then what you do is you go through the cave, and then there's a sign that says tomb. And I'm like, what is this? We go through, and then you see underground the graves of all of the people who were massacred by Lieutenant Colonel Kepler and his men. You can see there's no one else there. You're the only one there. And Laura, it's quiet, it's still, it feels like death. It's heartbreaking. You read the names of each person, innocent people. It's a war crime, but it's worse, really. And here are more pictures of the tombs. I just walked through all of them, 300 some, right? I've never been to anything like that. And I was like, this is also an unknown martyr, an Italian martyr. Now, here's why this matters. that when I was there, I was so moved, and you would have been too, and you will be when you read, just you'll get this feeling, which is that this is hallowed ground. I hadn't known about it. I was so glad I was there because I wanted to pay respects in a way. But more importantly, this. It was when I realized that in Eternal, I was writing about real people, right? There's fictional people in Eternal, right? As I've said before, it's a love story about three people. Elisabetta, Sandro, and the dog snorting, that's great. Elisabetta, Sandro, and Marco, who are fictional, right? They're in love. It's a love triangle. They're all best friends. Which will she choose? It's that great, what's it like to grow up and feel that love? And Elisabetta doesn't know who to choose, and she's going to lose one. And so there's a very, and their families are involved, and it's all about the relationship to their families. And at the same time, fascism is rising, because as I've told you before, fascism was born in Italy. Mussolini started it. And this whole authoritarian movement predated Hitler. And the whole youth thing, Mussolini created, not Hitler. And you see that in the book. So I really wanted to look at that. But what was interesting to me in writing Eternal, and why this cave massacre matters, is that while I made up the main characters, I was given by history real characters. For example, Colonel Kepler was my villain. Now, when I've written novels before, there's a lot of murder mystery, there's thrillers, there's family stories, it's about justice and law. I make up who the villain is. I invent that person. I figure I know everything about him, and that's sort of the stuff that goes behind any novel. Oh, what does he like to eat? What does he do? What motivates him? Is he motivated by love or fear or money, and how far will he go? But when I was writing Eternal, I had a villain that I didn't invent, Lieutenant Colonel Kepler. I had to get to know Lieutenant Colonel Kepler. So I read everything about him, and I read his testimony too. But when I went to the caves and I knew the story of how that he was the kind of Nazi who disgusted other Nazis. He was so sadistic. He was so rageful because what was happening, and it's really heartbreaking because it's March 1944. The war is going to be over in just a few months. The Allies and everybody will be in Rome, and he knows it. He's in a homicidal rage. He's in such a homicidal rage, he's probably a sociopath because it costs him nothing. And you will see in Eternal, because I'm not going to get any spoilers away because they'll kill me. And honestly, I don't want to, because what I learned is so fascinating, and I think it's really laid in the book, that he plays a cat and mouse game. And I was like, who would do that? And when I went to the caves, I knew. I said, Lisa, that's your villain. And I will tell you something interesting, which is not in the book, because this isn't in the book. This is just me informing myself about this villain so I could bring him to life for you in Eternal. In a way, he gets his in the end. Because I think I've mentioned before that a lot of these Nazis and a lot of the fascists, there was no Nuremberg trials. As I think I told you, there was an expert who said nobody wanted another Nuremberg. And I was like, that's a shame because that's an injustice. There was an injustice done to the Jews of Rome. There was an injustice done to the partisans of Rome, and they deserved those trials. But they deserved their own Nuremberg. But there was a trial that was held for Kepler. He was tried by the Italians, and I'll tell you something that's astounding and amazing. He was convicted of war crimes for what he did in Eternal, but mainly for what he did at the Ardiantine cave. And I'll tell you why. Because his defense was, I was just following orders, your basic Nazi defense, right? I worked at Nuremberg, well, didn't, but anyway, that's what they said at Nuremberg. I was just following orders. But he was convicted. Why? Because he didn't follow orders. Hitler authorized him, if you remember, to kill 10 men for every one of the SS officers they had killed. That would have been 330 men. But Kepler, in this homicidal rage, in this I don't care, it's nihilistic, it's evil to a nihilistic degree. He's like, I just grabs people, and he throws them in the thing, and he has them all shot. He killed 335. And because he killed 5 more than he was authorized to kill by his orders, he was convicted. And he went to prison for 30 years. And if that's not astounding enough, in Italy, he gets sick after a while, and he's put in an Italian hospital. And his wife, who if you read let me show you his picture. This is what he looks like. This is an actual picture of Colonel Herbert Kepler of the Schutzstaffel, the SS. His wife loved him. She called him, I'm going to quote from the New York Times obituary, a Christ-like figure. She helped him escape from the Italian hospital. The reports are either he used a bed sheet and climbed out the window and she got him below, or he got out in a laundry cart. But in any event, he escaped the Rome hospital. She got him by car to West Germany. Germany would not extradite him to the Italians, and he died at home in his bed. Let me read you a quote, because he admitted at his testimony. He also said this. When they were asking him why he was so brutal, now you know why he was so brutal, because it was his nature and he was infuriated and there were no limits on him. But he said he wouldn't even allow the people who were being shot, clergymen, to minister last rites. He said, well, we were pressed for time, and I know that people who are about to be executed always indulge in talking to the minister. That's who Lieutenant Colonel Kepler was. And now that you know this story, which is not Power of Eternal, you will understand much of what I understood about him, why he does what he does in Eternal, which is truly diabolical and truly something that when I learned about it and what took place in the Jewish ghetto in Rome, that I wanted to write about. I was burning to write about it. So it's a very serious subject tonight, but that is what I wanted you to know about the cave massacre, and now you know it.